Deuteronomy. This book, more than any other book, makes me understand why some people believe that the Old Testament God and the New Testament God ain't the same guy. What follows are my initial thoughts and reactions to this book of the Bible. I have not done any outside research regarding the more challenging or problematic passages of Christian scripture. Therefore, do not take whatever criticisms I may make in this video as my final word on the passage or verse in question. I am very likely going to be doing a Bible Revisited series addressing my different issues with the Bible, book by book, after conducting ample outside research. So now, without further ado, let's jump into the review. So Deuteronomy is obviously a book in the Old Testament, and it was written by Moses, and basically this whole book is Moses telling the Israelites all the things that they must do and the laws they must hold to whenever they enter the Promised Land. They're about to get to the Promised Land. Moses will not enter it, but he's telling them what they need to do in order to live long and prosper. So there's your brief description of the premise, the central idea of what Deuteronomy is all about. So now let's jump into what I actually thought of Deuteronomy. Look, it's a mixed bag for sure, but man, the hard to deal with passages in Deuteronomy, the seemingly unexplainable passages, they're pretty rough. I mean, overall, like what I think of Deuteronomy is I think it's a very, very fascinating book. And yes, there are some beautiful passages and beautiful takeaways that you can get out of Deuteronomy. But I have very mixed feelings about Deuteronomy, more so than any other Old Testament book, I think. Yeah, there are some things in here that I am like straight up like, what the heck? So, ladies and gentlemen, that's my brief, little review, overall thoughts of Deuteronomy. Now let's jump into the review and analysis and discussion of the different, passages and verses of Deuteronomy that, put a smile on my face and warmed my heart, and then the ones that also made my smile turn into a frown and make me very, very uncomfortable. So the beginning of Deuteronomy is essentially Moses just kind of giving like a recap of the Israelites' journey and stuff. And so it's like a lot of information that you already know. But this was a problem that I had in past books of the Bible regarding like whenever they would conquer towns, conquer civilizations, all that stuff. In past books, like, it seemed like they were basically, like, they were killing kids too, like little kids as well. And I'm like, ugh, that seems pretty awful. But I wasn't entirely certain. I can't remember exactly if there was a verse as blatant as verse 34 of chapter 2 of Deuteronomy regarding what they did to these towns and these different civilizations. But yeah, I'm just going to read verse 34 of Deuteronomy chapter 2, which is, "At that time we took all his towns and completely destroyed them, men, women, and children. We left no survivors." I have a serious problem with the fact that, the Israelites, under Moses' command, and I assume, there were no verses for that I remember from past books of the Bible saying that what they did when they sieged these towns and attacked these towns was wrong. So I can only assume that them killing the women and children was deemed permissible according to the Old Testament God, which is a real problem for me. Yeah, so if anyone has an explanation for killing kids, just leave it in the comment section below. Now I'd like to jump to Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 29. I really like this verse. The verse reads, "But if from there you seek the Lord your God, you will find him if you look for him with all your heart and with all your soul." I almost view this verse as basically like, if you look for the truth, you will find it. I'm still, going through the Bible and all the other religious books and philosophical books that I'm wanting to read. I'm trying to figure myself out, and I don't know if by the end of it I'm still gonna refer to myself as a Christian or not, because there are a lot of stuff, as I've already said in this video, there's a lot of stuff in Deuteronomy that, and I'm going to get to more of it here in a second, but there's a lot of stuff in Deuteronomy that's very concerning and seems inconsolable with, Jesus. But this verse, I kind of, my outlook regarding existentialist thought, religious thought, all that stuff, is just look for the truth, and you will find it. If you really, really look for it with all your heart, with all your soul, all that stuff. And here it's saying the truth is the Lord your God, and it very well may be. But I don't know, I just kind of like that verse because I think that's what everybody should be looking for. You shouldn't be looking for, whatever like makes you comfortable or makes you feel good. You should be looking for the truth, and you will find it. And if the Lord your God, according to the Bible, is that truth, then cool. If not, though, keep searching for the truth. That's what I'm going to do. Also, I just want to point out here, this is Deuteronomy chapter 6. This is just a famous verse. It's verse 5. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength. It's just, it's a famous verse, so I don't really have any thoughts on it. It's a nice verse. Now jumping to chapter 8 of Deuteronomy, verse 12 to 20. The Bible is extremely accurate. And this is one of the big, pluses of the Bible, the big pieces of evidence for the truth in the Bible, or at least that the Bible contains a lot of truth. The Bible's very accurate when it comes to human nature. And I'm going to read this passage here, and we're going to talk about it. When you have eaten and are satisfied, praise the Lord your God for the good land he has given you. Be careful that you do not forget the Lord your God, failing to observe his commands, his laws, and his decrees that I am giving you this day. Otherwise, when you eat and are satisfied, when you build fine houses and settle down, and when your herds and flocks grow large, and your silver and gold increase, and all you have is multiplied, then your heart will become proud, and you will forget the Lord your God, who brought you up out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. He led you through the vast and dreadful desert, that thirsty, waterless land with its venomous snakes and scorpions. He brought you water out of hard rock. He gave you manna to eat in the desert, something your fathers had never known, to humble and to test you, so that in the end it might go well with you. You may say to yourself, my power and the strength of my hands have produced this wealth for me. But remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you the ability to produce wealth, and so confirms his covenant, which he swore to your forefathers as it is today. If you ever forget the Lord your God, and follow other gods, and worship and bow down to them, I testify against you today that you will surely be destroyed. Like the nations the Lord destroyed before you, so you will be destroyed for not obeying the Lord your God. That verse, I just think, or that whole passage, I think is very accurate. Particularly, just human beings, as soon as we get comfortable, that is when we mess everything up. Like that, when we get comfortable, we have all of our basic survival needs fixed. We have luxuries. Civilizations collapse. You could make the argument that America, in some ways, is going through a possible collapse. Maybe it's just a momentary period that we're going to get out of, and we're going to recuperate ourselves. But it's hard to say because everybody has so much. We have so much, and we take it for granted. As soon as we don't need God, we basically forget about him. That's what happens time and time again. But what's always funny is when things get bad, people start going to church again. The Bible is very, very accurate. Now we're going to jump to chapter 9. This is the passage, verse 4 through 6, and it reads, After the Lord your God has driven them out before you, do not say to yourself, the Lord has brought me here to take possession of this land because of my righteousness. No, it is on account of the wickedness of these nations that the Lord is going to drive them out before you. It is not because of your righteousness or your integrity that you are going in to take possession of their land, but on account of the wickedness of these nations. The Lord your God will drive them out before you to accomplish what he swore to your fathers, to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Understand then that it is not because of your righteousness that the Lord your God is giving you this good land to possess, for you are a stiff-necked people. I think this is a good passage, and it falls in line with most of the Bible, which is basically saying human beings, we suck. We inevitably suck. It's in our nature. And so don't ever think that because you're so great, you're receiving this stuff from God. This passage is also like it's a direct refute to all prosperity gospel preachers out there who say, because you're such a good person, you do all this good stuff, you're going to be rewarded by God, and you're going to get all this money, and you're going to give it to me so I can get a private jet. You know, it's like, this is a direct refutation of that. It's like, no, you are not holier than anyone. You're not that good. In fact, the only reason you're getting any of this stuff is because God is wanting to give it to you as a gift. It's not because you necessarily deserve it. It's kind of like it's one of the central themes in the Bible, which is that you can't earn God's love. You can only receive it because he gives it to you. Another thing that's really beautiful about Deuteronomy, and pretty much the entire Bible as a whole, is its attitude towards the poor and the needy. I'm going to read a couple passages right here from Deuteronomy chapter 15. We'll start with verse 7. It reads, "If there is a poor man among your brothers in any of the towns of the land that the Lord your God is giving you, do not be hard-hearted or tight-fisted toward your poor brother. Rather, be open-handed and freely lend him whatever he needs." And now jumping to verse 10, "Give generously to him, and do so without a grudging heart. Then, because of this, the Lord your God will bless you in all your work and in everything you put your hand to. There will always be poor people in the land. Therefore, I command you to be open-handed toward your brothers and toward the poor and needy in your land." It's just beautiful. Like, it's all throughout the Bible. It's all about, don't forget about the poor. Because you were poor once, as in the Israelites were poor once in Egypt. You got to help those who are not as fortunate as you, because someday you may be in their same situation, and you sure would like it if people helped you in your bad situation. And I'm not going to read the passage, but lots of times people have a lot of questions about slavery in the Bible. I've had plenty of questions about slavery in the Bible, but it is always important to remember that slavery in the Bible was not straight up slavery like it was in America. And I think the passage, chapter 15, verse 12 through 18, is a really good example of how slavery was very different in the Bible than in America. It wasn't like people were thought of as straight up animals. At least I don't think so. I definitely don't get that from this passage for sure. Now jumping ahead to chapter 18 of Deuteronomy, this is going to be the passage verses 14 through 20. I'm just going to read it and say something at the end that I think will make sense regarding this passage. "The nations you will dispossess listen to those who practice sorcery or divination. But as for you, the Lord your God has not permitted you to do so. The Lord your God will raise up for you a prophet like me from among your own brothers. You must listen to him, for this is what you asked of the Lord your God at Horeb on the day of the assembly, when you said, 'Let us not hear the voice of the Lord our God, nor see this great fire any more, or we will die.' The Lord said to me, 'What they say is good. I will raise up for them a prophet like you from among their brothers. I will put my words in his mouth, and he will tell them everything I command him. If anyone does not listen to my words, the prophet speaks in my name, I myself will call him to account. But a prophet who presumes to speak in my name anything I have not commanded him to say, or a prophet who speaks in the name of other gods, must be put to death.'" So I think most of this particular passage is talking about one particular dude. A, Jesus. B, Jesus. C, Jesus. D, Jesus, bro. Yeah. I've talked about this in some previous, books of the Old Testament that I've been reading regarding taking like women and like people as plunder. Whenever I think of that, I always think, oh, are they like taking them as like sex slaves and raping them and stuff? Because that's what I always think of when I think of medieval times. That's what they did. Verses, this is chapter 20, verse 10 to 15 has something to do with that. As for the women, the children, the livestock, and everything else in the city, you may take these as plunder for yourselves. And that's just one part of that passage. You know, I'm like, well, what does that mean? What happens to them after? This is verse 10 of chapter 21. When you go to war against your enemies, and the Lord your God delivers them into your hands, and you take captives, if you notice among the captives a beautiful woman and are attracted to her, you may take her as your wife. Bring her into your home and have her shave her head, trim her nails, and put aside the clothes she was wearing when captured. After she has lived in your house and mourned her father and mother for a full month, then you may go to her and be her husband, and she shall be your wife. If you are not pleased with her, let her go wherever she wishes. You must not sell her or treat her as a slave, since you have dishonored her. I'm just kind of confused about, because right there it doesn't seem like the woman's being mistreated at all. Unless she's forced to marry the guy. But I don't know if there's enough evidence to say that that's what's happening here. Now we come to the passages that I was referring to towards the beginning of Deuteronomy that I was hinting at that are really problematic for me. Extremely problematic. Seem totally out of character with what's right and wrong according to the rest of the Bible. Seems out of character for God to command Moses to make these the laws for the people, because it seems, I don't know, it's just, and I know like people would say these passages, these were laws for that time and you don't have to follow them now, but my problem is that they were ever laws in the first place. I'm going to read you the first one. This is chapter 21, verse 18 through 21. If a man has a stubborn and rebellious son who does not obey his father and mother, and who will not listen to them when they discipline him, his father and mother shall take hold of him and bring him to the elders at the gate of his town. They shall say to the elders, "This son of ours is stubborn and rebellious. He will not obey us. He is a profligate and a drunkard." Then all the men of his town shall stone him to death. You must purge the evil from among you. All Israel will hear of it and be afraid. You see what my issue is? It just said that if you have a rebellious child, you can take your child to the elders, and if the elders believe that this kid is rebellious, then the townspeople can stone your child, and you can stone your child. Again, the whole explanation of, oh, that was a law for that time, and you know, it's different now. Okay, I get that. My problem, though, is that it was ever a law, that it was ever permissible. Stoning children because they're rebellious? What? If there's something about this that I'm missing or I'm misinterpreting, put it in the comment section below. And now we go to the next passage that is very concerning to me. This is chapter 22, verses 13 through 30. I'm going to read the whole passage because I think it's important that I read the whole passage. If a man takes a wife and after lying with her dislikes her and slanders her and gives her a bad name, saying, "I married this woman, but when I approached her I did not find proof of her virginity," then the girl's father and mother shall bring proof that she was a virgin to the town elders at the gate. The girl's father will say to the elders, "I gave my daughter in marriage to this man, but he dislikes her. Now he has slandered her and said, 'I did not find your daughter to be a virgin.' But here is the proof of my daughter's virginity." Then her parents shall display the cloth before the elders of the town, and the elders shall take the man and punish him. They shall fine him 100 shekels of silver and give them to the girl's father, because this man has given an Israelite virgin a bad name. She shall continue to be his wife. He must not divorce her as long as he lives. I don't really have a big problem with anything I just read there, but I read it for purposes of context. Now, continuing. Verse 20. If, however, the charge is true, and no proof of the girl's virginity can be found, she shall be brought to the door of her father's house, and there the men of her town shall stone her to death. She has done a disgraceful thing in Israel by being promiscuous while still in her father's house. You must purge the evil from among you. So basically, if a girl has sex outside of marriage, she should be stoned to death. And this is like before marriage, so it's not even like an affair. This is just before she's married. Okay, she lost her virginity, therefore she should be stoned to death. And again, I know it doesn't apply to today, right? I get that. Problem is that doesn't that seem freaking crazy that ever applied to any group of people ever? Like, it's... Anyways, moving on. There's more to this passage. Verse 22. If a man is found sleeping with another man's wife, both the man who slept with her and the woman must die. You must purge the evil from Israel. If a man happens to meet in a town a virgin pledged to be married and he sleeps with her, you shall take both of them to the gate of that town and stone them to death. The girl because she was in a town and did not scream for help, and the man because he violated another man's wife. You must purge the evil from among you. But if out in the country a man happens to meet a girl pledged to be married and rapes her, only the man who has done this shall die. Do nothing to the girl. She has committed no sin deserving of death. This case is like that of someone who attacks and murders his neighbor. For the man found the girl out in the country, and though the betrothed girl screamed, there was no one to rescue her. Okay, like that little passage there regarding like, you know, out in the country a girl gets raped, you know, don't punish her. That's good. I seem to have a problem with the previous passage a little bit where since a girl who's pledged to be married doesn't scream, you shall put her to death. I mean, women who get raped or, you know, whatever, they sometimes they can't scream because the guy's got her freaking mouth in a pillow. Verse 28, this is where, okay. If a man happens to meet a virgin who is not pledged to be married and rapes her and they are discovered, he shall pay the girl's father 50 shekels of silver. He must marry the girl, for he has violated her. He can never divorce her as long as he lives. And then a man is not to marry his father's wife. He must not dishonor his father's bed. Verse 30, that's fine. But 28 and 29, it says that if a man rapes a woman, at first I'm like, okay, this verse is, okay, this is understandable. If a man rapes a woman and is discovered, you know, he's punished. And, you know, although 50 shekels is all that he has to pay for raping a girl. But the worst part of this is that the girl has to marry the guy. The man must marry. So the girl who was raped has to marry the rapist who raped her. So if anyone out there wants to dare to explain that and make it not seem horrible, have at it. And now for a good verse that I really think is beautiful, that I think is great. And this is regarding marriage and all that good stuff. And this is also in chapter 24. This is verse 5. If a man has recently married, he must not be sent to war or have any other duty laid on him. For 1 year, he is to be free to stay at home and bring happiness to the wife he has married. That's a beautiful verse. It's wonderful. It's lovely. And now moving on, later in that same chapter, chapter 24, verse 14, do not take advantage of a hired man who is poor and needy, whether he is a brother Israelite or an alien living in one of your towns. Pay him his wages each day before sunset because he is poor and is counting on it. Otherwise, he may cry to the Lord against you, and you will be guilty of sin. You know, that goes along with what I was talking about earlier as far as the Bible just has a lot of great stuff regarding the poor and the needy and how they should be treated, and you know, just a lot of beautiful stuff regarding generosity, charity, and just helping those who need help. And I think that verse 14 and 15 is a great example of that. Verse 16 I'd also like to talk about. Reads, fathers shall not be put to death for their children, nor children put to death for their fathers. Each is to die for their own sin. Each person should be looked at as the individual and judged accordingly. And then verse 19 to 22, I'd like to read that because it's just another example of like, I don't know, it's just beautiful. I'm going to read it. When you are harvesting in your field and you overlook a sheaf, do not go back to get it. Leave it for the alien, the fatherless, and the widow, so that the Lord your God may bless you in all the work of your hands. When you beat the olives from your trees, do not go over the branches a second time. Leave what remains for the alien, the fatherless, and the widow. When you harvest the grapes in your vineyard, do not go over to the vines again. Leave what remains for the alien. the fatherless, and the widow. Remember that you were slaves in Egypt. That is why I command you to do this. If you discover that you dropped a $20 bill, don't go back for it. Leave it for someone else who needs it. Because you know damn well there are people out there who are walking on the street who could need that money. That's basically what that's saying. Now jumping to chapter 28, verses 15 through 68. This passage I'm not going to read because it's extremely long, but what I will say is that it's terrifying. And it's terrifying in the way that people talk about, oh, the Old Testament God, man, he... wrath. Yeah, this is basically like Moses telling the Israelites, if you do not follow God's commands and you do turn away from him, this is what is going to happen to you. And the passage is basically a haunting, terrifying passage talking about how, like, you're going to have diseases, you're going to be driven to the point where you're going to start eating your children, and, like, not kidding, like, that's in here. I'll read this one thing. It ends with this. Verse 68. The Lord will send you back in ships to Egypt on a journey I said you should never make again. There you will offer yourselves for sale to your enemies as male and female slaves, but no one will buy you. That is lightweight compared to the rest of it, but when you read the whole passage before that and it ends there, it's like, whoa. I don't know, I just wanted to point out that passage because it's so brutal and terrifying. And I think that's partly the point, which is like, you know, don't abandon God, don't turn to your own ways. You know, and here's why. You should be afraid of what would happen if you did that. And so I get that. I had to touch on that passage because it really is like one of the most haunting passages in the entire Bible. And the last passage of Deuteronomy that I would like to read is Deuteronomy chapter 31, verses 19 through 22. Now write down for yourselves this song and teach it to the Israelites and have them sing it, so that it may be a witness for me against them. When I have brought them into the land flowing with milk and honey, the land I promised on oath to their forefathers, and when they eat their fill and thrive, they will turn to other gods and worship them, rejecting me and breaking my covenant. And when many disasters and difficulties come upon them, this song will testify against them, because it will not be forgotten by their descendants. I know what they are disposed to do, even before I bring them into the land I promised them on oath. So Moses wrote down this song that day and taught it to the Israelites. Basically, the meaning you can get out of that song is like, no matter what you do, no matter how many times you mess up, God will still take you back. He'll still rescue you at some point. Doesn't mean that he's gonna, you know, save you from the hardships that you yourself were asking for whenever you abandoned him. But it kind of, at least from what I read, it seemed like it said that God will, even if the whole people do turn away from him and endure hell on earth, God will, in the end, rescue them out of it as he has rescued them out of hell and slavery and all that stuff before. So anyways, ladies and gentlemen, those are my thoughts, my review, my analysis of the book of Deuteronomy from the Old Testament of the Bible. Enough about me and all my thoughts. Let's hear from you. So have you read the book of Deuteronomy? If so, please comment below and tell me what you thought of it. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, if you like this video, please like it and subscribe. Tell your friends about the channel. And never forget to